Players from Team Fortress 2, Balloon Tower Defense, Metal Gear Rising, and other games with unlockable weapons, abilities, and build paths know some of the paths and items just fucking suck. I don't know why you'd use a bat over a fish, but some goofballs still do. But back on topic, what abilities are the worst in Risk of Rain 2? One of my favorite games of all time. Risk of Rain 2 has a very strong roster of characters and abilities, but with so many abilities to choose from, there are always going to be a few that are worse than the others. Now, here's a little disclaimer. This is from the point of view of doing Eclipse, and also, this is just my opinion. You can disagree. That's great. You guys can type it in the comments. Tell me you disagree, and tell me why. It's not really a big issue. And also, I haven't played all the way to Eclipse 8 with all these characters, so I'm not going to be like the end-all be-all of this, so don't take it as like gospel or something. So it's a bit of theory crafting and just fun dialogue about which one's worse. So just take it with a grain of salt. With that out of the way, let's begin. Commando has no shortage of lesser abilities. Frag Grenade, Dive, and Phase Round are usually just the worst options, but I'll give it to the Tactical Dive. The only upside it has is it can be done mid-air for full value, where the Tactical Slide will give you a slight boost. But that's the only upside. Same cooldowns, lower distance, and you can't shoot while doing it. I will admit it has a few use cases where it's better than the slide, but those are few and far between, and usually it's just better to run with the slide. Huntress doesn't really have a bad item, so to speak. All of her abilities are very well rounded, and it's very hard to choose one or the other. Which is going to happen a lot, because for once, this game is well balanced. Who knew you can balance a game and make it fun to play by just having a smaller roster of characters and focusing on balancing? But back to Huntress, I'd say her primary fires are equal. Now given she is one of my least played characters, take this with a grain of salt. Although I do have a favor for the triple shot like most other people do. Her blinks are a good trade-off where you trade off a huge blink that can go in any direction for 3 blinks that can only go on the horizontal plane. So you trade a huge burst of mobility for smaller blinks of mobility. But again, I like the trio more. So that just leaves the arrow rain, which isn't very bad, so to speak, but it does leave you up in the air for long enough to get sniped out, which isn't very good when you can be one-shot. Bandit has 2 unlockables that I would even consider bad: the rifle and serrated shiv. While the rifle falls short of the shotgun in almost every category other than a little extra range, I'd still say the serrated shiv is worse. I'm not even a huge fan of any of the secondaries Bandit has. I think they're both pretty useless. Like, you don't really need them very much. The serrated shiv just does less damage for less accuracy because it has the same fall off as the shuriken, which is just awful. Since you're already going to be behind the monster anyway, you might as well go for the base secondary because it does more damage and it's more guaranteed. And I just like Desperado, so that's not going to be put on this list. For multi, it's kind of obvious and short. It's the Saw. It's almost always never worth it to get near a monster in Eclipse, especially Eclipse 8, unless you're going in for a stun or if you're mercenary. Especially with how good multi's other abilities are, it's just not worth it. You could really just go for double nail gun, the rebar retool, and even rockets would be better than this. Engineer's going to be a quick one because all of his abilities are relatively similar and useful in their own use cases. But also, his unlockables are usually direct upgrades in most situations. Want to roleplay SpongeBob? Go with the Bubble Shield. Want to make the fungus actually good? Go with the base sentries. Want to feel like an artillery cannon? Go for the Hydra missiles, or whatever the fuck they're called. But the original mines are just inconsistent. Why would you wait and bank on the monsters walking into your mines after they're ready, when you could just spam the shit out of mines that auto-target them and do 600% damage? It's just not worth it. Artificer isn't a character I play a whole lot either, but I played her more in Eclipse than I played Huntress, so I have more of a leg to stand on in this one. And it's another toss-up between 2 choices, her Plasma Bolts and her Nanospear, which are just kinda lame and redundant. Her Plasma shots give your shots more AoE, but you lose the fire, which just seems like a bit of a crutch, because if you could actually aim, then you don't need the AoE, and then you actually get the fire on top of it if you use the base ability. Nanospear takes an 800% damage difference with the Nanobomb, going from 2000% damage to a measly 1200. And what do you get for this? A bit of Pierce, and you freeze enemies. You know, the freezing thing that you do with your utility that you can't get rid of, so you're always going to have it. But at least it has some use cases where it's better than the Nanobomb because of the Pierce over her Plasma Bolts, which are just worse. For Mercenary, I truly do not believe he has a bad ability. He just has a weakest out of the bunch. And it's just because the alternative is just straight up overpowered in most circumstances. I normally used Rising Thunder, Focused Assault, and Eviscerate, but the other options aren't all that bad. Whirlwind trades damage for airtime, Blinding Assault gives you 3 slashes as long as you hit a monster, and they all stun, and Slicing Wind trades invincibility for a ranged ability. But as many of you know, invincibility is just better than having one ranged ability. Since his whole kit is based around being in the enemy's face anyway, you might as well be able to go invincible while you're in their face. Rex is where the context of it being an Eclipse really fucking matters. Because depending on the mode, Directive Disperse and Directive Harvest are the worst. In any other mode besides Eclipse 8, I would say Directive Disperse is worse. The health price tag is just worth the damage. But in Eclipse 8, I would say Directive Harvest is the worst, because you just need to be able to move around without taking permanent damage. Entangled Growth is worth the health price tag because you can one-shot bosses with it, whereas Directive Harvest just kinda stinks. It doesn't really do a lot, and you don't really need that healing anyway, because most of the time you're going to be maxed out. So this is Future Abe. I decided to change my mind on Loader, and I think this choice boils down to the default options for Loader because they're just not as good as their unlocks. Sometimes it can be decent, but most of the time they're worse. I think the Pineapple Hamburger is definitely the best because you can just maximize your damage, especially with the new DLC, and just spam them out and do a ton of damage in an AoE. So that just leaves the default grab and the normal charged punch. And I give it to the charged punch. It seems better on paper, but it just turns out to be worse in practice. With the grab, you're not at a sizable disadvantage when you use it, but with the charged punch, you have to stand still just to get the effects of it. And keep in mind, if you're on Eclipse 8, you're going to be taking permanent damage while this is happening. So it's just not worth it. Give them the clap and move on. In all my time playing Acrid, it was really hard for me to choose a worse one, even though it's kind of clear after the stuff I said about multi. Ravenous Bite is just the worst. Although the other unlocks for Acrid are just not great. Blight is okay, but it's just better to have Poison in most circumstances. And Frenzied Leap is very situational, so most of the time it's just way better to go with the standard. It's just like I said, 9 times out of 10, it's just not worth getting next to an enemy. You might as well just stay away and spit at them, instead of getting close for a slight burst in damage and a little bit of extra healing. But for anyone who goes for the melee Acrid on Eclipse 8, I have only respect for you. And if someone does it with multi too, honestly, I can only applaud you. I don't use Captain very often, but I would say it's either the Resupply Beacon or the Diablo Strike. So to help me with this, I'll call my friend who plays him way more than I do. Well, fuck me. Railgun is a simple choice for me because it's just the polar field. The first time I saw this, I thought it would be really cool and I tried it. And even then, I knew it was garbage. It's just not worth it. It's just better to have mobility. Like, in anything. Like, this just sucks. It just stinks. And on a character that always feels like they're walking through mud. Like, if this was on any other character, I wouldn't even be that mad. But, like, Railgunner does not need this. Like, it's just another crutch, I feel. It's just like, if you can't hit the crit points, you use this. But it's just better to have the mobility option. And Void Fiend is the last one. But, like, he doesn't really have ability choices. Except for his skin. That's right. I say the default skin is the best looking one, because I like looking like a fishbowl that's painted black. And on that note, I'm going to end the video here. I really hope you guys enjoyed hearing me babble about abilities that no one really cares about. I'd also really like to hear about what you guys think about this, if you guys disagree or agree in the comments, because I really do read all the comments and I would like to hear what you think. And with all of that said, I really hope you guys have a great day.